coverage. No medical exams, and you can get up to $3 million worth of coverage. I'm grateful we were prepared.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/term. That's ethos.com/term. Paid spokesperson. Time spent on application may vary. Online health questions required.
Now, from the Signature, a division of Esquire Bank Studios.
This hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag.
Now, I actually, Squirrel, have a suit in my closet with a sticker on it that says defendant. May the defendant please rise, as it's known in my house. My next guest is a renowned criminal defense attorney, also an author, and a storied legacy, career of success and patriotism. The book, the new book, it's a novel, called Tuxedo Park. It comes out on the 18th. And I have to tell you, I've been reading about it. It's very interesting, a political thriller, and it fits right into his long history of a defense attorney. He was also the defense attorney for Marine veteran Daniel Penny. Thomas Kenniff, how are you?
I'm doing well, Shaun. Thanks for that wonderful lead-in.
Well, it's interesting. I love that people that live life rather than become a victim of it. And when you look back at your career, that's really how you did it. You became a lawyer, from what I can gather, in the military. Is that correct?
Almost correct. I actually went to law school, took the bar exam, and started at a very large firm, decided in a relatively short period of time that it's not the kind of law I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the courtroom. And I ultimately applied to be a district attorney at a lot of the local offices around New York City, and Janine Pirro hired me. So now I had left a large law firm working for a substantial pay cut in the government sector, and it was right in the aftermath of 9/11. And my office mate at the time, who later became my law partner, Stephen Razor, we were having a conversation. I said, gee, I wonder if the military had a reserve component, because I'd really, I always wanted to serve, and I always, JAG always seemed very intriguing to me. This is when A Few Good Men was still a very popular movie and so forth.
Of course,
and he
yes.
said, he said, yeah. And he said, it's funny you should ask. I've already been talking to a recruiter, and he kind of slid the card over my desk, and the rest was history.
Did you find Demi Moore? No?
No, but I found Jessica Simpson. Simpson when I was serving in Iraq. Jessica Simpson showed up, for the USO thing, and I got my picture in the paper with her. So to me, that was better than Demi Moore.
Well, it's fantastic, and I have to tell you, I am a huge, huge fan of Janine Pirro. Not for the reasons people think. If it was not for Janine Pirro, there would not be the domestic abuse laws that exist to protect women and children. Most people forget that about her. She is an incredible person.
She was a maverick. Yeah.
She started that all.
She was on the forefront of that. Yes, she did.
And,
absolutely.
And she doesn't get credit that she deserves. So that must have been an extremely interesting time, because you also are in New York now still, or no?
Yeah. So what happened was, after working for Janine for a few years, and then deploying to Iraq, I came back, and Janine had stepped down. She was running for higher office, and I had some life changes that kind of pushed me more towards doing something where I could have a little more independence than reporting to a government office every day, even if it was a great government office like a DA's office. So myself and Stephen Razor said, "Hey, the time is now. Let's hang out our own shingle and let's start a law firm." And that was 20 years ago. We just celebrated our the 20th anniversary of our firm a couple of weeks ago. So it's really, really cool. Really great road.
Yeah, congratulations. I hope you enjoy your success before the government decides to tax it away from you. So please go out and have a good time, because I don't think you've got much going on there in New York. But it's really fascinating when you look at what has happened to our society. I mean, New York was always spicy, right? But nothing compared to Chicago. I mean, Chicago is twice as dangerous as New York, but always spicy. So there's always a lot of activity going on. No, it's interesting. It's a war, and you taking the defense attorney, you must come across some really, really bad and some really, really good who are wrongfully convicted. So it's got to be an interesting day from the morning to the time you go home, isn't it?
No, it's it's an extremely interesting way to make a living, and that really inspired a lot of why I wrote this book. One of the questions I'll usually get at social affairs or cocktail parties, well, it's a couple of questions. One is, how do you represent those people? And, I have an answer for that. The other question I always get is, what's the most interesting case you ever worked on? And to be honest with you, I'm kind of like a deer in the headlights when I get that question. I mean, everyone knows Daniel Penny and those kind of cases, but I kind of I don't like to live in the past. I give something my all and I finish it and I kind of like erase the hard drive. So I would always be like, oh, well, I have this case. I don't know. That's a good question. So, when I decided to sit down and write a book, I said, well, why not write about A, what I know, and 2, what I know people seem to find very interesting, which is the kind of work I do, being a criminal defense attorney or being in the crosshairs of the criminal justice system.
So when you tie in this book, from what I can gather, I just had a few minutes to read about it. You tie in the idea that there is an attorney that has some knowledge and has to stop somebody who is very dangerous, a sociopath, a psychopath, whatever you prefer, a degenerate. Let's call him a Chicago Democrat, just for argument's sake. It's Chicago radio, and he could potentially become the president of the United States, and we know what happens if that happens. So, this is your mission to kind of walk the line of what you know and not betray who you are, right? I'm assuming that's what it is, to stop this person.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, look, I tell you, I've always been a history buff. I graduated with a degree in history. And if I had all the time in the world, I'd probably like to write a book about Abraham Lincoln or a U.S. Grant or something. But, I don't have hours and days to spend in a research library somewhere. So I could write this. And I could borrow on, you have a 25-year career on both sides of the criminal justice system, as well as in the civilian side, the military side, and the JAG Corps. And I could kind of, look, it's a work of fiction. There's no question. But I can borrow on a lot of what I lived and a lot of what I've seen. I've also been in the political world. I ran for Manhattan District Attorney against Alvin Bragg. So there's a lot, this is a political legal thriller. It just kind of came naturally to me.
So I love this stuff, too. I really do. And, in New York, it's an extremely rich history of corruption, of political corruption, and both of our cities, right? Chicago and New York, it's classic of what this all is. Which is why I've understood since I'm a kid. To me, the mafia is not a bookmaker. It's not a loan shark. To me, the mafia is government. And when you look at the profitability, the lack of prosecution, and it comes with pensions, too, that you don't even care about. I mean, just take a look at some of our upper echelon that have gone to prison. We have 1,800 politicians, elected officials in the last 70 years, 1,800 that have been convicted or indicted. It's a staggering reality. These are politicians. These aren't gangsters who have trouble, with the word what. These are actual politicians who get elected. They put the Brooks Brothers on. So to me, the mafia has always been the government or players within the government. So I love the idea that you're doing this and you're stopping somebody who could be a president, but we've had gangsters as president. I don't know how you didn't. Are you going to go after LBJ? Go after LBJ. I think that rat bastard stole everything.
Well, it's funny because there are a couple of lines in the book. I didn't even remember this until the way you just mentioned it. But where the protagonist, who's a young prosecutor, who's comes upon or is called to the scene of the abduction and ultimately what becomes the murder of his teenage romance 20 years earlier, and the clues start leading back to the individual who then becomes the president-elect of the United States. And it's this race against time to stop this, to bring this person to justice, to get him arrested, to get him indicted before Inauguration Day. But there's a couple of points in the book where talking about organized crime and his history of having as a young prosecutor in New York City, prosecuted organized crime figures, and basically coming to the realization that the line was very thin between them and politicians.
Well, the similarities are amazing, right? One of the things growing up around the area I grew up with that always puzzled me about these half-ass gangsters is the willingness to kill their friends. I mean, it's amazing, the willingness to kill their friends. And when you look at some of the scandals in government, you look at the willingness to kill other Americans. It's fast. I mean, I wonder how you look at the releasing of some of the major scandals in our history, the releasing of the documents, and I'm sure you went through so much of what happened with the Kennedy files. To me, I've always been very suspicious. I've always believed the government killed him. And when you look back at it, I don't think you can come to another conclusion, but it's up for interpretation. But there's a willingness among government to kill our own citizens, to use our citizens as fodder. It's really similar to what we learn and what we romanticize in The Godfather, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's there's no honor among thieves, right? And,
no.
And you're around politics, and I mean, look, I was with Rod Blagojevich last week in New Jersey, and
God, don't do that, Tom. It's a lot of showers. Well, you got to take 3 just to get back to even. But go ahead.
Well, listen. I mean, Rod is, he's an interesting guy. I don't think he would even describe himself as perfect. But, what was done to him had a lot to do with political retribution from within his own party. I mean, he is adamant that, he was in Obama's way and there was a price to be paid. So,
wow.
When you talk about, that they eat their own, yeah, absolutely.
But that's the game. You got to call me, Tom, because believe me, he doesn't marry sweet Polly Purebred, known as Dick Mel's daughter. He's not smart enough to ask us if we want insurance on our rent-a-car at the airport. Believe me, don't buy a word that scoundrel has to say. That's a case of victim versus predator and predator. They're all victims until they were predators. And that's the funny thing about watching all of this. I find it extremely interesting. And when you look back at being a prosecutor and being a defendant, both sides of that, I used to feel it was harder to be a prosecutor, right? Because defense should be hard to prosecute somebody. It was hard to be a prosecutor. Then it was hard to be a defense attorney. Now I wonder how you view it. You ran against Alvin Bragg. I don't think there's been a better example of what's happened, what we've seen. I know her name is Letitia, but I'm sorry. If I look at it, I'm from Chicago. It's spelled Letitia. So Letitia and Alvin Bragg, and you look at the weaponization of law. That's something that hasn't really existed out of the open the way it does now. Do you feel that way, or do you feel it's always been that way?
Oh no, it's worse than it's ever been. I'm very much involved with. It was the Patriot Freedom Project. Now it's Weaponization Watch, and it was started as really the only legal advocacy group to raise legal defenses for the January 6th defendants, of whom I now represent close to 50 as plaintiffs. Look, I don't like January 6th. I don't like that people went into the Capitol. I don't like, anytime people engage in mayhem. But there's a matter of proportionality. You don't take people that were essentially, at worst, guilty of simple trespassing offenses, which was what many of them were convicted of, and put them in solitary confinement. I mean, in New York City, we can't put someone charged with murder one in solitary confinement at Rikers Island. It's true. I mean, legally.
In Chicago, we give them new shoes. In Chicago, you get a new pair of shoes. Get the hell out of here.
I'll do you one better. I mean, I served in Iraq. I dealt with detainee ops issues. I've dealt with, we couldn't treat a terrorist the way these people were being treated. So what it was is it was done in the name of extracting as much political equity for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party out of January 6th as possible. And treason and insurrection and all this insanity for something that was, at its worst, mayhem. And I don't like it, but you don't do it. That's not how it's supposed to be handled. So, and that's just one prominent example. But the weaponization of government is all around us, and there is no accountability for prosecutors, and that's what fans the flames.
It used to feel when we were kids. I'm assuming we're around the same age. I'm in my 50s. You too?
51, just turned.
Oh, you're a baby. All right, so you could be my kid brother. So, it used to be that there was no question when we grew up, right? There was a good guy, and the odds are the good guy was going to win if he was able to adjudicate his case, no matter what it was. It didn't have to be a court case, whatever it was. If he was able to present the good side of the argument, the righteous always felt like he had a shot. And then as you get older, you realize, well, it doesn't really work that way. What we've seen over the last 5 years is outrageous to me. And when you talk about the insurrection, please feel free the next time you're defending one of these guys, say it absolutely was not an insurrection. Shaun Thompson wasn't there. Because that was the most disorganized insurrection I've ever seen. Call me crazy. I've been Friday nights get a little more spicy than what I saw there. But it also looked very staged and very... a lot of entrapment I felt. I never liked the FBI in my neighborhood. It's forever bothering Italians.
There's no question. I mean, you watch videos of these people not only being led in, being ushered in by Capitol Police. They shut down the broadband. All the restaurants shut down. I mean, basically, they were luring these people into the Capitol. That doesn't make it right that someone went in and did something that they shouldn't have done. And look, anytime you have a group of tens of thousands of people, you're going to have some legitimate bad apples down there, and there were some legitimate bad apples.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It was by far the exception, and none of what occurred in any way justified the disproportionate response. Sounds too legalistic. I mean, it was a deprivation of people's rights to due process. Deprivation of their protections against cruel and unusual punishment, which people endured. I have clients that were told while they were being held in the D.C. gulag that, if you want to exercise your freedom, right to religion, if you want to take communion, you'll have to take the COVID vaccine. I mean, this is Bolshevik Russian stuff we're talking about.
Oh,
here.
Tom, and I had an aunt on from I forget the state. I think New Jersey, but I'm not 100% sure. And her nephew was a kid who wasn't right. He was like a little slow. He wasn't right. He was easily manipulated. And they put him in solitaire, wouldn't let him talk to somebody for months and months and months. I mean, it's stuff you would only read about like in the 20s when they used to torture guys back then.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it was an insane thing. And, I also, about New York, people forget about that Serpico case. It's not just a great movie that launched Al Pacino's career. It's a true story. And Serpico, if you remember that story, it was coppers, it was investigators, it was judges. And when that Capitol Police stuff came out, and you see the cushy job that those Capitol policemen are, and that Falcone guy, that looks like a preview for a Serpico Part 2. To me, those are, in Chicago, those are called clout jobs, where like coppers sit behind an alderman's house, wait for him to get horny and go visit the girlfriend, and they get a pension at the end of it. But they're all in on the scam. To me, that's what it looked like. And when I saw that Ashley Babbitt, that unarmed girl, 119 pounds, get shot in the neck, that was... Now, I've been arrested a few times, which is why we're going to get your card directly in case I get arrested after the show. You're my guy. So I never... You ever see a cop shoot a 119-pound woman? You could throw her down to the ground 50 ways to Tuesday, put her in handcuffs, whatever you want to do. At a certain point, I think history is going to judge this era very, very harshly, detached from all forms of American law. And I think it's going to really be a vindication to your career and these people who were victims of it. Do you feel that way?
Well, I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so, because a lot of terrible things have happened, and Ashley Babbitt, of course, is an example of. And you want to talk about, picture if the situation was a little different, right? Picture if these were left-wing protesters, if these were BLM protesters that entered the Capitol because they were upset over George Floyd or what have you, and a white police officer shot one of them in cold blood. A young black woman of Ashley Babbitt's stature, or any stature doesn't matter. And in the context, I mean, it would be, it would be taught in classrooms. There'd be statues. There'd be all sorts of things.
Yeah.
If
only Ashley Babbitt was a felon, a pimp, and a drug dealer high on fentanyl, we could have had protests in the street. I mean, you believe he's finally sober for 6 years. George Floyd,
yeah. No, we would have gold line coffins and God knows what else.
A veteran, a mother of what? She have 2 kids. She never had done anything. I mean, it's an amazing time. The good news is, I'm so glad that people like you are there, because we didn't even get to talk about Daniel Penny. But when you see what he was put through, and you hear the answer by these idiots in Chicago who are hiring gangbangers. I mean, I don't know if you're watching the news, but in Chicago, they've got legit gangbangers. They just got one of these violence interference guys, like the head guy from Inglewood. He was a pedophile with a 14-year-old kid. They just arrested him tonight. But it's amazing how the violence interferers, as long as they're gangbanging degenerates who can barely read, they're the good guy. But Daniel Penny, who was a citizen who intervened a potential murder, he almost went to jail. And if it wasn't for you, he would have, wouldn't he?
You're absolutely right. And, it was absolutely awful what they did with him. And, even though the jury got that one right, thanks to, in part, myself and my legal team, and we did do a phenomenal job, if I do say so myself. It's not easy to, what was not an easy environment to try that kind of case. But even in the victory, people think that, if you get charged with a crime or you get indicted, as long as you're acquitted, everything's great. Well, it doesn't work like that. Roy Donovan, Reagan's labor secretary, I believe he was, famously said, "Where do I go to get my reputation back?" Daniel Penny's life was permanently altered by this. And more than just my client, think of all the people that have been victimized, because now people are too afraid to stand up, knowing that, hey, even if I do something heroic, I still may wind up facing the working end of indictment from a woke prosecutor, a Soros-elected DA that's going to come after me. Well, now you just put, God knows how many lives in further jeopardy, because your chance of finding a good Samaritan in the aftermath of that, unfortunately, is very, very, very thin.
Well, that's why I moved down to Florida. If you ever need anything in real estate, you call me. In the meantime, if I ever need a defense attorney, I'm calling you. Because if you got Daniel Penny off, that's like an appetizer to when I decide to get spicy. So I appreciate you making time. And I can't thank you enough. The name of the book is Tuxedo Park. It comes out in a couple of days. But moreover, where do people go? I'm assuming your site has your firm has a site.
So, I'll tell you, it's a great book. So you want to read it because it's just going to be a great read. 2, the publishing industry is woke as a joke. So it's very hard for a guy like me, no matter how good of a book we read, to find a good agent, find a publisher. Thankfully, we got Post-Hill Press to come out and do this, because they're one of the few more conservative-leaning ones. So, support this kind of work, because it's not the woke crap that's out there. You can get the book at tuxedopark.com, and we have links to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target, but buy it on Amazon, because it's still technically a pre-sale, so you can get 25% off and free shipping if you purchase it before Tuesday, which is the official publication date. So who doesn't like saving some money? So tuxedoparkbook.com, or go to Amazon and search Tuxedo Park, Thomas Kenniff. It'll come right up. It's just going to be, you're going to love it.
I am. I can't wait to read it, and I can't wait to meet you. It's been a real pleasure. I wish you the best of luck in the future. I hope I get a chance to shake your hand. So thank you for making time.
Yeah, let's do it again, Shaun. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Broadcasting from the petri dish of corruption known as the state of Illinois.
In the upper Midwest, the nation, and around the world.
This is the Shaun Thompson Show on AM 560. The Answer.
Man, I love this place. I've been surfing here since I was a kid. Now, seeing my grandson out on the water, it means everything to me. Watching him and taking in the blue waves, the sea breeze, the blurry horizon.
If you have geographic atrophy, or GA, subtle changes in vision could mean it's